Hello and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Excited to have Brian Bristol here with us today, co-founder and CTO of Loans. Brian, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to kick things off, could you tell us, the audience, my team, a bit about your story?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Brian Bristol, as you've been told already. I'm co-founder and CTO of Pigeon Loans. Pigeon Loans is the world's first and global leading lending platform dedicating to allowing people all over the world to make loans with each other. I've been doing this for about 8, 9 months now. We've grown our usership to almost 3,000 users. We have about 230 loans on the platform so far. We're raising capital and we've raised almost half of our round already. So we're excited to be doing this. We're here to support the community and really empower people all over the world.
For we work in investor acquisition, both with investors and issuers, the startups, various stage companies that are offering equity online. So I really resonate with the whole initiative you guys set out for.
Yeah.
And how did you how did you bring on 3,000 users? That's a substantial audience.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of that is testing, trying to figure out what really speaks to people. So when we first launched this idea about 8, 9 months ago, we need to go out there and figure out if a thing called product market fit existed for pigeon loans. So we first went and did a lot of experiments when we were trying to figure out whether or not people want to make loans with each other from anywhere in the world. We just went to Facebook, we went to Google, we went to all these different social media platforms and just started running small ads that kind of spoke to the problem that we're trying to face. Over that time and running those small ads, we tried to compare ourselves to the rest of our industry. In our industry, we know that it costs about $10 to $13 to really speak to someone and then get them to sign up. But for us, when we started to put our ads out there, being like, hey, you can use this service to make a loan with your friend, you can use this platform to make a loan with your loved one, people were signing up and they were signing up in droves. I ended up for a experiment that we ran, we ended up having about $3 to $4 in terms of customer acquisition costs compared to that 10 to 13. So once we kind of got that little inkling of saying, all right, there might be something here. Let's see what happens if we put some money behind this and we try to actually scale this to a point where we can grow our usership. So over the past 8, 9 months, we've been doing that. We've been running a lot of kind of online campaigns. We've been working on SEO to really optimize that. And there's kind of a next nexus that we're looking forward to over the next year or so to really grow the organic side of our things as well as that paid side we've already got.
I love how you're diving right into the numbers. So
Yeah.
$10, $15 for a conversation. You shifted things. And for the product, which is very interesting, by the way, this allows friends to provide friends with loans.
Yeah.
I'm guessing at different terms, so the percentage increases over time.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of just take a step back and paint a picture for you how we work, it's a very simple platform. I last year during the early stage of the pandemic was faced with a situation where I need to make a loan with a family member of mine. Everyone was kind of struggling financially, trying to figure out, oh, how do I put some food on the table because I don't know how far this is going to go. That was something that was happening to my family as well. So in that conversation, most normally, if you're someone who's trying to lend someone money or borrow money from someone, you just say, you know what? I'll give you some cash. I'll write a check for you. I'll Venmo you. I'll Cash App you. I'll do something like that. But for this particular scenario, the sum of money that I was being asked for was so significant that I was like, I should just make a loan for this, right? I should get this money back over time because this is something I'm going to need myself at some point. So what I did is I went online. I went to Google. I went to all these different search engines to find something, and there was no product that existed, no platform that said, "Hey, you can create a loan with a promissory note. You can track your payments over time, and you can do all of that in a seamless ecosystem." So what I ended up doing is I ended up creating Pigeon Loans to solve my own problem. And in creating that, we now have the platform that allows people to do that. So if you or a brother or a loved one, you just want to make a loan for, let's say, $2,000 between each other. Over the course of that $2,000, you want to pay it back in 6 months or so. And because you also are like, hey, this is a significant amount of time, let me get some 3% interest on that so that I don't lose it to inflation. All of that can be packaged in one note for us on a platform, and then you can have that transaction done throughout the entire ecosystem of Pigeon Loans. So that's what we're really aiming to do, to kind of sustain relationships through the avenue of loans and to give people an easy and kind of private way to do that transaction.
And what happens if they're delinquent on the loan beyond the increase in interest? Does it affect credit score? Is there some type of repercussions?
Yeah, so that's everyone's favorite next question. What happens if someone doesn't pay me back, right? And it's in our FAQ. So for us, there's kind of three end states. Right now, when you make a loan on our platform, we hope that everyone pays each other back and we're hunky dory and everyone's good to go. But there's a second end state that basically says, all right, you haven't paid me back, so let's try to figure out what we can do. So within that second end state, there's a bunch of subcategories. The first subcategory being we've gone to the end of our 12 months where we agreed to get paid back. Now we want to extend the loan. Let's see if the borrower can make these payments over the next 6, 7, 8 months, and we'll be fine by just creating an addendum. So in order for us to kind of do that extension process, we actually ask for the approval of the lender, and we facilitate that conversation between the two parties. So that's one way a loan can end. The second way is, hey, you went through the extension and no one got paid back at the end of it and we still got to a default scenario. Maybe let's cancel the debt. Let's go through the forgiveness process and actually get something applicable and kind of amicable between the two parties. And even if we don't get to that point where we want to cancel the debt, now we're in that worst case scenario where we want to actually default and kind of breach contract per se. So for us, whenever you generate anything on our platform, it's a legal promissory note. When we went out there to go create Pigeon Loans, we talked to every lawyer that we possibly could in the US, outside the US, just to kind of get the thought and gauge how legally standing these documents and notes would be for people in everyday life, right? So once we kind of solidified that document, we made that available for people to download. So if you go through your 12 months and you get to a state of default, you can download that contract and go to what's called a small claims court or a collections agency and present that note to them. In presenting that note to them, you have every power legally in the United States to get that money back from whoever you're trying to get it from. So those are kind of the different ways that we do it through those process. And I guess the one last note that I want to put out there for that third option that I said and how a loan can end, for us, we reward our customers. So there's no other platform out there in the world that basically says, hey, I'm going to help someone out by giving them $1,000. We'll give you cash back. We'll give you like gift cards. We'll give you things to basically say, hey, thank you for being generous to someone else, right? And that's another way that we help incentivize people in paying them back, as well as just giving someone something instead of just escaping and walking away with all of your money, right? So those are the different end states for us.
Very interesting. I love the thought process behind it. And what's your business model? How does Pigeon Loans monetize that transaction?
Yeah, definitely. So for us, we always want to be a company that does well on the company standpoint, but we still want to speak to the customer's pain points and be a holistic kind of organic type of corporation. So for us to make money, what we've done is we've balanced the scales of affordability as well as a significant revenue model for us from a business perspective. So when you make a loan on our platform, if you're lending someone money, it's always going to be free. $0, never going to ask for any money from you because we want to incentivize you to help others out. But for borrowers, we charge a subscription model fee. So for those 12 months that we were talking about beforehand, if the course of the 12 months goes by and you are paying your loan and you're making your repayments, what we're asking from the borrower is $4.29 for each one of those months. So over the course of that loan, Pigeon Loans will collect that as a subscription. We get to stay out of the loan itself. We don't have to charge any interest fees or anything like that. And you get to do the transaction with whomever you want. On the platform itself, we've baked in a payment portal too. So we partner with a global agency called Stripe, which everyone knows and loves. And using Stripe, we're able to actually move money through any way possible from 40 countries around the world. So we can do a credit card transaction, we can do ACH, we can do SAFA transactions, we can do all of that good stuff. And whenever you do a payment on our platform using one of those methods, we may charge an extra transaction fee. That transaction fee will go to us, we'll pay our payment processor, and then we'll keep part of that as revenue as well. So that's how the whole system works together from a revenue perspective.
Very nice. And I imagine your projections and entire financial model is very clean with how fast you were able to bring on investors yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of give you some oversight into how fast we brought on investors, we started raising money mid-February, early March, and the goal was to basically raise 500K, 468 specifically. We're now, what's today, June something, June 10th, June 11th, and we're about halfway to that round. And to give you perspective on that, I don't know anyone in VC. I am 24 years old. I just graduated from college 2 years ago. Like, this is me cold emailing VCs, angels all over the world and country, basically saying, here's a problem that we had, here's the solution we created. Does it speak to you? Let's do a deal here, right? So with that being said, our financials were looking good. We just kind of really passed that stage from being pre-revenue to now revenue. We're still kind of a small MRR in terms of how much we're generating each month, but it's significant enough for people to be like, all right, people are paying for this product. People obviously want to use this product, and it's growing. And it's growing at a rate that we think could be substantial for the next 5 to 7 years.
And again, to hear those responses really shows a lot. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen offline investor conversations for the past 15 years, digital for equity crowdfunding. As you know, we work on investor acquisition heavily, which was a common initiative for stage groups we were marketing over the past 6, 7 years. So to gauge that level of reaction really shows a lot of validity to your model.
Mm-hmm.
And congrats on being this proactive at this stage in your career as well. I'm sure that really stands out
Yeah.
to your team and partners.
Mm-hmm.
And again, numbers connect everything for me, the block. So you said you had 3,000 users. I
Yeah.
know it's not easy to acquire a user, and you went over some of the cost structures for that. It was 230 contracts, agreements, you said, 230 loans already. Fantastic. Are there any percentages you could share? Are you guys seeing any trends that were surprising in terms of contracts getting, loans getting
Yeah.
completed, delinquencies, anything along those lines?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of cool statistics, and I have them all memorized, so I'm gonna just rattle them off for
All
you.
right.
So basically, when people come to our platform, they go through this process. They negotiate their loan, they activate their loan, and they make their payments and whatnot. But the beautiful thing about giving power to the people and making them the kind of owners of their loan structure is that it depends on the time in which they're living in, what they're doing on our platform, and how much money they're moving. So when those first stimulus checks kind of came out in January or early this year, and then later in March, we saw a lot of activity in terms of saying, "Hey, we're negotiating $600. We're doing loans for $1,400." Like those were very common things coming through our platform. People are willing to basically help someone else out with the same money that they received from the U.S. government. So that was one aspect of things. In terms of those interest rate conversations, you would think that like, hey, if I'm giving money to an uncle that I know usually doesn't pay someone back, like I'm gonna just charge him 20, 30% interest and be done with it, right? But for these types of loans, we found that within the interpersonal space, 93% of our loans are an interest rate of 7% or less. So when you give people the keys to whatever kingdom that they have financially, they tend to act quite ethically, and they don't actually really try to stiff their family member or loved one because it's a conversation and a transaction that they've put out there in front and said this is how we want to do it. With that being said, the types of loans in terms of that average principal, it definitely shifts. But right now we see a range between $411 to about $2,700. And the types of relationships that we see on the platform, the most common in terms of trend thus far has been a lot of small businesses trying to obtain cash for inventory or trying to obtain cash to pay their lease rent and whatnot. It's been a very deep conversation that I've had with customers. I have on like on my website, you can just schedule time to meet with me, and I'll literally just speak with you the same way I'm speaking right now. And those types of conversations tend to be everyday people being like, "Yep, I need an extra 5K just to put some extra inventory in my store this month." Normally, I try and apply for a loan through Bank of America, but because I saw your platform, I know a guy, I know an uncle, I know someone who can help me out with this scenario, and I'm going to pay them back instead. And that would keep me from having to apply my credit score, damage my credit score, any of the stuff that normally you would consider when you're trying to run a small business like that. So those are the most recent conversations and some insight there as well.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
I love the model. Love what you guys have built out. Reminds me of some conversations in blockchain with smart contracts that I heard years back, but you're actually bringing it to life. You're making it happen. You're not throwing in a lot of tech terms that people may not be aware of. You're making it very straightforward.
Yeah.
Whenever I've lent money in the past, my younger years, more of a common thing, maybe around college, you kind of
Mhm.
just assume that it's gone,
Yeah.
right? And if they
Mhm.
pay you back, good on them. Oftentimes, it's more of a privilege of theirs. It's empowering to be able to get that back to the lender. So I see this as a way to formalize it.
Yeah.
Make it real, not just hey, here's money, but a serious engagement between two parties. Also, from an organization standpoint,
Yeah.
things
Exactly.
along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we're aiming to be. We're really trying to shift that connotation. Like when you think about loans right now, like you said, you're like, oh, I'm gonna give it to you and hopefully I get it back one day. But there's the real scenario in which communities can support each other. Instead of basically saying, oh, I don't know if you're really trustworthy, we can build that trust between people. And we can have people really say, I'm gonna rely on XYZ to help me get through this phase of my life because we have all the resources that a bank or a government or entity or another company might. So there's no difference between people helping each other out versus institutions and people helping each other out.
And do you guys have a B2B model as well too?
Yeah, so that's
How does
something.
that work? Because working with small businesses, we get asked quite a bit
Mhm.
for flexible payment terms, and it's essentially us loaning to a brand, and we have to be very selective about it. A lot of factors to it, and it's less on a performance end, which some marketing agencies provide, more on net 30 payment terms. I know that's very
Mhm.
common, even the standard for various industries. Are
Yeah.
you guys offering this to provide more power to lenders in a B2B scenario?
Yeah, so that's an interesting aspect of pigeon loans. Like, should we shift into the conversation of bringing on traditional lenders to our platform? So when we think about that conversation, a lot of different things come up to play. You have financial regulations, you have SEC regulations, you have all this privacy stuff. So a lot of that comes a bunch of overhead once you start working with traditional financial institutions. So pigeon loans can work with these institutions without actually having to have that type of conversation amongst the different organizations that already exist. So for us, we're always going to be that people to people aspect. We're never really going to step into the loan and try and alter that. But what we do see is an advantage to match people to traditional institutions that they've most certainly been kind of pushed out of in the past. So let's say, for example, my name is Dave, and Dave is paying back his friend over the last 3 years on time for a significant amount of loan. Dave, he's been doing this and he has a lot of data in our system. And that type of data would be very valuable to, let's say, a Discover or a Bank of America or a Visa, someone who's offering kind of the traditional ways of getting credit in our society. When I present a profile of saying, hey, Dave has done these types of transactions, he's been successful, he's been on time, he's been doing this the right way for years upon years, there's no conversation that a bank or a Discover or some type of entity like that wouldn't want to have to kind of bring Dave onto their platform as well. So from the B2B perspective, it's more so a data type of play. We're never just going to sell people's data, but as an individual, if you come on our platform and you say, hey, I've been doing things the right way, I want to see if I can graduate into the institutional side of things, we can facilitate those conversations for you because we've been that third party kind of overseeing those transactions and making sure that you're doing your due diligence to kind of be the best financial person you can be. So for us, what we're planning to do is build out those types of avenues over the next couple of years. Right now, Pigeon Loans is a service that you can actually use, but in order to actually build in that kind of ad type of connection referral network, we need to have the organizational pieces in place, whether it be partnership connections, whether it be content, whether it be kind of machine learning algorithms, to actually make those types of ties between our network and our community. And that would be a massive, massive play for us. I think it's going to be huge in terms of saying we can report this stuff to the credit bureaus in the future when we have that much data to work with. It'll be huge for influencing interest rates across the globe. It'll be huge for remittances. There's a lot of opportunity here for businesses to benefit from people benefiting from each other.
Absolutely. And when I think of these acquisition costs, and that's why I ask so many questions about the product, it's so fascinating to me. When I think about the conversion behavior you've been able to get, I have to ask, what channels have you been using? What's been the most effective in terms of messaging? And is there anything you could speak to in regards to audience, in regards to targeting? You know, what have you guys been doing to effectively market?
Yeah, definitely. So I touched on it before with kind of the original experiments. We tried Facebook, we tried Instagram, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. And Facebook was the one that stuck. So that is kind of a separate avenue that we've always been using and it works. But for the other side of the coin, actually getting people to interact with the platform and do stuff, you need to target a little bit differently rather than just saying, here, just sign up. So we struggled with that at the beginning. We couldn't figure out how to get people on that would sign up and actually use the platform. We had a bunch of signups, but no one was actually making loans. So we said, all right, let's take a step back. When we created this company, what was the kind of user journey flow that led me to want to create this company? And in thinking about that, I coined this term called the confusion funnel. Basically, what happened is I was confused about how to go about my situation making a loan with a family member. I went to Google, I went to Yahoo, I went to every search engine I could to search for the solution for what I was confused about. So when I thought about that relationship between what I was thinking and how I was acting, I said, all right, if people really want to find a service like Pigeon Loans, what we need to do is we need to be right dead smack in front of them when they go to make that type of search. So in terms of Google search engine ads, we're at the number one every single time you type how to make a loan with friends and family, how to get a promissory note, how to do all this stuff that usually you would search when you're trying to find a solution like that. The next aspect that we're trying to work on right now is really bumping up that SEO to have organic content on our website so that we're both at number one for the ad aspect, but also number one for just organic search. We're really trying to be an authority in the space that talks to interpersonal loans. And when we become that authority, it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling loop. The same way you think about Nike when you think about shoes, we can do that same thing for loans. Pigeon Loans, all right, I need to make a loan with a friend or family. If I need to go buy some Coca-Cola, I know that's soda. Like all those things are relationships that people make in their head that we think we can build over the next 5 to 7 years.
I love it. And I always appreciate the brand direction and in the future tense, and being able to use traffic sources, including advertising, social advertising, as you're mentioning, because for us, it's so closely tied to performance. It's so scalable. What about the funnel? Are you guys doing heavy email marketing, or how do you keep your audience engaged?
Yeah, so that's part of the funnel we're still really building out. So right now, when you sign up and you get on the platform, and then there's a little bit of a lull. Like what we will give you is an email saying, "Hey, you earned pigeon points. Hey, this is what we're doing. Yada yada yada." But for us, we still need to figure out what times and when to contact people about making loans because it's not a transaction that you do often in your life. We know statistically speaking that people make 1 to 2 loans per year. You either make it at the beginning of the year, the end of the year, and if we don't hit you at those 2 points, you're not making a loan at that time. So we don't really inundate people with emails all the time because that's going to be annoying, and we know the fact that they're just not interested in making a loan at this time. But what we do is leave kind of updates that we exist as a company. So every month we have this newsletter that goes out. It's called The Carrier, and The Carrier is very community centric. It basically updates everyone in the community, being like, here's what we've done as a company and how we've grown. We're still kicking, we're still providing loans for people. here's some more kind of information on us to solidify the fact that we are an authority in this space. Whenever you're ready to make a loan on our platform, we're here for you. And that's the way that we've been really building the community from the kind of ground up. The next aspect that we want to build so far is content as well. We think it would be an awesome place to have educational and financial literacy resources for the conversation about loans. Most people don't know that if you default on a loan, as a lender, you can take the default and write that off on your taxes for the tax year. And those are types of statistics and fun facts that no one knows because no one is being educated on that type of concept. So we're never gonna be the funnel that's always trying to get to that seven number magic mark so that you convert over to paying customer. We'll always be that kind of back of your ear, whispering, waiting for that right opportunity that when you're thinking about making a loan, you'll remember it and you'll be like, all right, let me go to Pigeon Loans and do that.
Absolutely. And yeah, the missing there, being able to show that for taxes. I know we can do that when lending to other businesses,
Yeah.
even in, as an individual investing into businesses and being able
Yeah.
to claim losses. But you don't think about that paying rent for a friend or anything along those lines.
Exactly.
Very interesting. And it sounds like a road that does not have much awareness around it. What
Yeah.
about third-party validation? Are you guys reaching out to press regularly? Are you looking for with different types of groups, organizations, I imagine schools, or different types of other centers in the community that could be replicated in different markets?
Yeah, so that's there's only so much bandwidth that me and my co-founder have. So we'd love to like go to every press and spread the word about pigeon loans, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. Like we think that will come as we continue to grow and provide value for people. But in terms of the ways we've been having conversations with people that could work with us, they tend to be in line with the communities that already are helping people with certain problems. So Wefunder, for example, which is where we're doing our crowdfunding round right now, and that's open for the next couple of months. So if you want to invest, invest. But for Wefunder, they provide kind of tranches of money in aggregate for people who are trying to invest in promising future businesses. But there is a subset of businesses like restaurants, like barbershops, like salons that don't need to raise capital in the traditional sense. They really just need $20,000 from a couple of people to help them get through the next 2 to 3 months. So there's been interesting scenarios where like WeFunder themselves has thrown us a couple of leads to be like, yo, help out these guys get some extra cash from people that they need in order for them to continue running what they need to run. And those are the ways that we've been interacting with third parties because a lot of businesses understand that there's a gap here. And then a lot of people understand that they don't have a service or solution that answers the problem that they need. So by talking to both of those at the same time, we're able to really orchestrate that third party affiliation, like you're saying. But in the future, we definitely do want to do New York Times. We've been in a kind of a TechCrunch pseudo interview similar to this. And then we've also kind of done a little bit of, I guess, personal relationship connections as well in terms of media and press. But that's something we definitely want to focus on in the future too.
Absolutely. I know how important social proof is,
Hmm.
particularly for new products.
Yeah.
People don't believe what they read on the internet.
Yeah.
I like to call it that, to really encapsulate who's searching and how it's first appearing. So
Mhm.
to be able to have those logos on your
Yeah.
site, on your WeFunder offering page, as featured by, to be able to have promotions going out, maybe over email to different organizations and pointing at this.
Yeah.
I can even see it going out for different parenting groups,
Yeah.
as an example.
Mhm.
Parents are happy to provide loans, but they want kids to treat it responsibly,
Yeah.
in my experience.
Mhm.
And in my circles growing up, and now as an adult,
Mhm.
they want to teach their kids the system rather than just help them out.
Mhm.
So I could see awareness of that doing very well. So
Mhm.
using that as an example for organizations and groups where you could have an email go out to millions of recipients, hundreds of thousands of recipients, perhaps, and then just any other types of um, uh, online visible influencers, anywhere where there's an existing
Yeah.
audience, that promotions could live. Let's say on a social platform, social group, Facebook groups, things like that. I've seen to be particularly effective. So just asking, and it's like you said, there's so many hats to wear. Being able
Yeah.
to prioritize which channels get the right attention is a
Yeah.
job in its own.
Yeah, definitely. Well, but we're excited. We've grown this much without turning that stone over. So the minute we turn that stone over, I think it's gonna be crazy for us.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Wefunder. Any thing that's been particularly effective for you for your equity crowdfunding campaign there?
Yeah, so we started WeFunder about 2 or so months ago. We set a goal for ourselves to first raise 50K. We did that in 7 days. And then we're like, all right, well, we passed 50K. What do we want to raise now? We said, all right, let's get to 110. And we just recently passed that 110 mark about a couple weeks ago. So we've done our round kind of successfully, and we put it out there to really give people that are already in our community the opportunity to both invest in the company's growth as well as say, hey, support us if you believe that what you're using is something that others would use in the future. That way, others can use it in the future because we're supported financially. So with WeFunder itself, we kind of had a ad hoc strategy. The way we announced our WeFunder campaign is super dope. So March 15th, which was the day legislation changed in the US to allow for bigger equity crowdfunding platforms, we released a cameo by LeVar Ball announcing, hey, Pigeon Loans is here, they're raising money on WeFunder, and we put that on our socials. When people saw that LeVar Ball, even though it was like a paid cameo, was talking about Pigeon Loans, this company that's only been around for 5, 6 months, that blew up. That like went semi-viral, and people were like, "Yo, what is this?" So having that kind of all right buzz, celebrity figure slash whatever it be, promote us that first couple of days really skyrocketed our kind of these guys are here, these guys are legit type of thing. So once we did that, it was really about sustaining those conversations. Anytime a family member or someone that I personally knew a relationship with wanted to ask about pigeon loans, I would first ask and then answer their questions, but then I would point them to WeFunder and say, hey, if you want to learn more about what we're doing, go to WeFunder, figure out what we're doing, and then potentially invest or spread it amongst your friends and family. So the methodology has been very grassroots. Now that we've raised most of our kind of goals, what we have is the WeFunder existing as a back pocket jack of trades. We'll keep it over for the next couple of months, but we also want to balance that with the conversations we're already having with VCs and angels outside of WeFunder. So it's a little bit of a mix. The strategy, I'm not going to say it's some roadmap that we have lined out and we went word for word, kind of checkbox for checkbox. But it was a strategy that really spoke to the way people think about investments, the way people kind of envision their future. And our whole narrative was, if you believe people can support each other in the future, then support us on WeFunder so that we can help enable that.
And that messaging, I'm sure, speaks the worlds to the audience.
Yeah.
They're able to feel that type of approach. And I always like asking. I mean, it's such a focal point for entrepreneurial marketing at this point is equity crowdfunding initiatives. And I find so many groups pass over the messaging and go right into what's the cost of capital, how am I getting more investors in. We'll get brought in at times and have to go layers deep to capture that essence. It's really a standout to me how clear those tactics are for you guys. And to take all this expertise that you've been able to build, and again in an early part of your career, I imagine it spans well before that as well too, through different projects while you were in school and beyond. But what type of recommendations do you have for founders towards their marketing, towards their business model? What should they test out in terms of their own growth?
Yeah, I think the best thing as a founder you can do, and I've been told this myself, is just listen to the customer that you're trying to make a thing for. Like if you are going out there and you're very technical, which I'm technical by trade, and you're just trying to finish the next sprint or build the next feature or just be featured in some cool TechCrunch article, it's not going to work. Like no one is gonna listen to you because you are in your own way. So when I think about kind of the founder journey, a lot of that is listening to the people who have the smallest voices. Because the more small voices that you add up over time, the more and more you'll understand the problem that you're trying to solve. It's great to listen to the amazingly big investors who have all these years of experience and whatnot, but they have years of experience in all these different avenues. So therefore, the depth at which you know is very scattered, and it's more of a breadth conversation. But when I'm talking to, just like that example I gave before, a small business owner who knows exactly what they need to use the platform for, they have taken days, if not weeks, to think about how to solve their own problem and then found the solution for it and are now giving me advice as to how to help them solve their own problem. So that's the biggest advice I would give for sure. Just listening to the small voices that you have in your community that you're trying to build. That way you have everything covered from the foundation and you can build upon that from the top.
Closed feedback loops.
Yep. Exactly.
Brilliant. And it's so simple, yet so many people miss it, including us, where, we'll see a campaign not working and we're asking ourselves 30 different questions and making all these changes. And it was actually brought up a few times on this podcast that ask the audience.
Yeah.
If they're not converting, ask them.
Yeah.
Ask them why, ask them what they'd like to see, what they would convert on. I try to look at this very productively where, so many consultants will want to point out what's wrong without providing insights on how it can work. And like you said, you can ask investors, VCs, angels, all of these different types of very experienced, very smart people.
Exactly.
But they won't be the ones buying.
Yeah.
If you, or signing up. Ask your actual targets. You're basically presenting a proposition of what do you need to move forward on this? Yeah. And as they fit the persona of your target market, it's likely that many other people in their category will then be interested to the point of action.
Exactly. Yep. And it's a snowball effect too. Like if I have that conversation with someone and they're like, yo, he next week went and changed it just for me, they then go out and tell their buddies and their buddies are like, yo, let me check this out. And then you just keep the ball rolling. And it's crazy.
And that's the ultimate form of marketing, peer-to-peer.
Exactly.
When your friend, when your family member, depending who they are, of course, let's say the ones that influence you in a positive way, tell you to check out a site, tell you to check out a product, a piece of content, an investment opportunity. I find that to be far
cool perspective than even an advertisement where you can mention how big
of a fan I am of ads. But peer-to-peer, advocacy is ultimate. Yeah, and what about when things aren't working? So many podcasts, webinars talk about how great it is to use marketing and how much it's going to mean for your top line, bottom line. What about when it's not happening? You're following the fundamentals. You're asking people in your network, perhaps your target audiences, what to do. If you're not getting performance, how can, or even if you are, and then it slows down and it's a down month, how can you optimize things to a point of effectiveness? What's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, I think I'm still trying to figure out that answer myself. Like, we've been doing so well so far. At some point, we're going to get that bump in the road where we're like, ooh, like, what do we do? Like, how do we shift, right? And I think a lot of that conversation has to deal with experience. Like, that's why a lot of experienced founders get the funding they do, because they've gone through that aspect. But also just about thinking about other people who come before you and how they got through those problems themselves. So being wise about the solutions that you're building so that you can preemptively anticipate those problems, that's how I've kind of gauged Pigeon Loans thus far, and how I think we'll continue to do that going forward. Now, we're definitely growing, but we obviously have our warts and all. Like, we've burnt money places where we're like, why did we burn money there? We've done things from just a brand or cost perspective that we're like, why didn't we just leave that alone? Like, those are things that are just part of the journey itself and part of trying to become successful. You have to make those types of mistakes, but you just have to understand that this is a part of a massive roadmap. Like, it's not just one entity that will end you. It's that 7 years of due diligence, waking up in the morning, doing something, and actually dedicating to building what you think the vision will be. So kind of getting over that for me personally is taking that step back and thinking about the journey holistically. I'll definitely get in my head and be like, yo, what? Like, why is this ad falling short? Like, we spent so much time on this, or like, why is this now breaking from a technical perspective? But you have to think about it. Like, we didn't have pigeon loans 8 months ago. So now when you take that step back and think about, now you're trying to just solve the problem for a customer that you have, that's already a massive leap between those 8 months. So it's definitely about perspective. And I think the entrepreneurial journey, you have to have those other voices in your life, or at least go to read about or listen to those other voices, like this podcast for sure. You just kind of get that insight and you say, this is how I continue to push forward.
I like it. And I think it's not told to be part of the standard route. It's not in the brochure, you know, especially when you hear the success stories. And I could tell you, we've been part of them firsthand. Every single one has hit obstacles, even to the point where there was no light at the end of the tunnel. But founders, marketing teams kept pushing, and miraculously results turned around. You know, with the right tests and with the right approaches to manage things to a point of effectiveness. You know, changing audiences, changing messaging, changing funnels, and then being able to get to a point of, all right, this is working. Now we could talk about growth and scale. And I like to ask about that as well too. You know, I know you guys are at a point of scaling. I know you've seen other projects scale as well too. What are some insights towards scale? How can a group who is, you know, seeing the numbers they want take things to whole new tiers of market share?
Yeah, definitely. So for us, we definitely have to answer that question. That's probably our next step. Like, we're at that point where we're really finally proving product market fit. So once we get past product market fit, then we have to start scaling. And to actually scale effectively, my kind of hypothesis right now is to do it in such a way that you can still manage what is going on from a technical or overhead or operational perspective, benefit from the increased growth, but not just fall flat on your ass. Like, an example I like to give is Clubhouse. Clubhouse blew up this year. Like, Clubhouse went from a cool app that you just kind of talk to people to now being the entire foundation of social audio spaces. And when they did that kind of growth, their app had already been fine-tuned, prepared for such a growth. Like, they were already thinking about what might happen if these right pieces come together and make this massive, massive entity. So those are the types of things that I think really need to happen for you to scale effectively. Yes, you can put more money into it and then basically scale that way, but there will be interesting scenarios like a Clubhouse or even like the game Among Us. Among Us, if you read their story, they had built Among Us for 3 to 4 years prior just for those features that we all then discovered one day and were like playing with it. And that was just something they anticipated. They were working on that, right? So you need to be prepared beforehand for that fire scale moment so that when you do get to it, you can do it efficiently. You can actually handle the load, you can handle the money coming in, and you can do it to the point where it now makes you a solidified name within society. If you're thinking about scale before you get to the point of building the foundation is just going to crumble and all of that scale is going to fall apart and you're going to end up like WeWork, basically.
Live example. But it's so true. Scale without foundation crumbles. Very strong way to say it. And again, it shows me so much about what you guys are doing in terms of planning and how you want to do it sustainably. This is what our clients are asking us on a daily basis. This is what founders who are talking to us about marketing recommendations are inquiring about is how to scale. So being able to do it in the right timelines and with the right justifications or the right validation to the model.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you can't control scale. So the thing you can control is how well prepared you are for it.
Absolutely. Prepare for it. Planning is everything. Don't just do it in a live campaign. Have it in the strategy, have it in the plan, be able to, adjust things accordingly from there.
Yep, exactly.
And this has been extremely insightful, Brian. Love how we've been able to dive into the numbers. What are some closing thoughts? What are some closing notes, inspiration, if you will, that you have towards founders, marketers, and the VC community that listens in?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I still actually don't like the name entrepreneur. I just wanted to solve a problem that I was facing, right? So if you have a problem that's facing you, just go and try it. Try and make something. Like if you make something and it end up works, then you become a pretty successful person. But if you make it and it doesn't work, you just lost a couple of months of your life and you just keep it going, right? So a lot of those things, serial entrepreneurs are great. They have their place in society, but like the best of the best are the ones that really went out there, found a problem, and then solved it. And that's kind of my 2 cents there.
Absolutely. Big part of the pitch deck, problem, solution, going for it, and that determination to manage it until it hits the milestones.
Yeah.
That unstoppability is a factor I hear in you, by the way, and that I've seen in all of the most successful campaigns we've worked on, the top founders.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And Brian, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I know you said you have a feature on your site for that. What's the best route for them to get in contact?
Yeah, so if you want to contact me directly, all of our emails are at pigeonloans.io. My email will be bbristol@pigeonloans. Or if you want to just do support, I'll be there as well. I answer all those support emails. In terms of our Wefunder, go to wefunder.com/pigeon.loans. That will be open for the next couple of months. Feel free to invest or ask me a question there. I tend to answer pretty much every question that's asked there as well. Always accessible. You can go to contact@Pigeon Loans, and I'll just set up a time to talk with you.
And I definitely encourage you to do so if you're listening in. Brian, I've enjoyed the conversation immensely here. Going to be telling some friends about Pigeon Loans and, recommending that as the route to go. Even just the education and claiming it as losses. I think I have to talk to my CPA after this.
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
And again, the marketing, congrats on the numbers you're hitting. Next time we'll have you on, we'll talk about scale even further, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll make sure to see you next time. Take care.